many videos and posts that I make, I promote the importance of having a process for your innovation projects. And I'm going to repeat it again at the very beginning of this video. The process is a must for your innovation projects, especially for your open innovation projects. These are complex projects. You need to make sure you do the necessary steps in order to achieve your goal. Having an innovation project without a process is setting yourself up for failure. Just be sure, if you don't have a well-established process, you're going to fail. Most likely, not 100%, because I always leave some space for a miracle. But, and here comes a big but I'll be talking about today. Processes should never be in the first place. They should never be placed before people, especially in innovation projects. And today I want to talk about why it is so important to break the rules and processes in innovation management. Why I believe that innovation managers should do that and why they should allow their team members to do that. Well, my rebellious nature is begging me to talk about it. The reason why I want to talk about it is that I see many managers that are focused on processes and making everything as efficient and effective as possible. But if we are looking for creative breakthrough solutions, processes alone would never give you that. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy and I've been working for more than 5 years on organizing collaborative university competitions for world well-known companies to help them solve their extreme innovation challenges. And now I continue my journey with the goal of fostering innovation by helping different parties of the innovation process collaborate and co-create. On this channel, I explore collaboration projects for innovation management, share my experience in managing these projects and processes, and uncover strategies for making collaborative efforts more effective. And I want to start by talking about processes, what they are and why we need them, and then I want to highlight why breaking them and going against them might be exactly what is needed for innovation. First of all, processes in management exist to help companies achieve their operational and organizational goals as effectively, as efficiently as possible. Processes help plan, control activities, coordinate the work of people and machines, and make sure we get consistent outcomes. They provide structure, they provide clarity, and they provide control over all the various activities we have in our companies. So yes, processes are extremely important for all the various types of activities that we have, including innovation. Processes exist to guide you, to give you an idea of what the next step might be. And you need to know the process and you need to have it in order to know when exactly you need to break it. Like, when you innovate, you cannot just randomly focus on something. I mean, you can, but when we talk about innovation within an organization, when we talk about business, we have to keep in mind that the innovation we create should help our business achieve its strategic goals, whatever they are, whether they are like to bring customers and increase revenues, help the company to survive and grow in the market, to outperform competitors, like whatever. It doesn't really matter. So we need processes to understand what exactly we're going to work on, in what area we need this innovation. We need to study the market, we need to understand what our customers want, which challenges with the current product they face, what they lack in existing products, what competitors have, what they're working on, etc., etc. So here we have Lean Startup as a great methodology for innovation, not only for startups, but for established companies as well. And then when you work in your lab creating this new product, new material, new molecules, you have processes to do that. For example, you have rules and processes for using the equipment, ordering raw materials, legal processes to sign agreements, to collaborate with other organizations, etc., etc. And it is all needed, like all these processes that we have, that you have, they are needed, especially for incremental innovation, which most companies are really focused on. But sometimes you have to break the rules. You have to skip a certain step. You have to overuse the equipment or materials. You have to start working with that university before you actually sign that agreement, because we all know how long it takes for legal departments to do it, or whatever. Like you have to break the rules. So let me get into detail about why processes and innovation might sometimes go in different directions. And let me start with the fact that processes help us get consistent outcomes, but innovation is not consistent by its nature. It's random. Even incremental innovation, though, those are usually really small improvements. Even incremental innovation is still random to a certain point. It's really hard to predict whether we will achieve the result we are hoping for, and even more how different this result will be, because it will be different from what you expect. And we never know what is achievable or not, how much time we need to achieve what we want, or whether we have all this information that we need to achieve the result. Well, maybe we don't have it. There are so many things in innovation that we cannot control. Yes, is the case even for incremental innovation, though of course creating an incremental innovation is more amenable to processes. And I'm not even talking about disruptive or radical innovation. Then a process consists of sequence of structured, often repeatable actions, often with built-in feedback loops for improvement. But how can you expect to get a different result? And innovation is a different result by its nature when you do the same thing over and over and over again. I just think it's impossible. When you do everything according to the book, how can you create something new? I don't think it's possible. And of course, feedback loops make this picture a bit nicer, but still, we are still talking about repeatable actions, maybe changing just something small on the way. But with innovation and creation, especially with radical and disruptive innovation, I think you often need to do, not I think, you need to do something completely different, something that was not even on the table, actions that were not even considered before by anyone. And even if we're talking about incremental innovation, even if we're talking about like this lean startup methodology I was talking about, sometimes you have to skip steps or ignore the feedback of customers this methodology relies on. And sometimes your gut feeling is a more reliable source than customer feedback when it comes to something entirely new. Imagine Steve Jobs relying on customer feedback and initial criticism of many Apple products. And then, processes are about instilling control. But as I mentioned before, innovation can hardly be controlled. At some stages, for example, when we need to understand what we're trying to solve, what we need to come up with, when we need to frame a problem, it's easier to control our actions. It's easier to understand what we need to do to get the result, which is a problem formulation. But at a later stages, when we're working on this solution, it's important to let go of this control. We can assume We can come up with ideas, we can come up with hypotheses to check, but there is no way we can control an outcome when we create something new. It doesn't exist. It never existed. How could we know what we get? Another important point, probably one of the most important ones in my opinion, processes do not create breakthroughs. People do. So you should focus on people first, on their creativity, their talents, their skills. Processes should assist, not take a leading role. They should not become your focus. Processes exist for people. People do not exist for processes. We are not machines, and innovation is not automated. If you want to innovate, if you want to create something new, and for business, innovation is essential, you need to remember that. Even with today's AI technologies, you cannot create without people. So you must give your people freedom of thought. Let them sometimes do things the way they feel is right. Inspiration for creating something that has never existed before is not taken from everyday processes you should follow. It is taken from all the not so obvious, hidden, completely detached from your processes, activities, and things. There is this very famous article which is called The Weird Rules of Creativity, which is published in Harvard Business Review, that explores creativity management, which is essential for innovation. At the beginning of the article, its author, Robert I. Sutton, mentions that when it comes to creativity management, you often should go against what traditional management says. You should hire people you don't think are a fit for a company. You should praise those who don't want to listen to customers and bosses. You should think less about money and return on investment and do more impractical and weird things. You should fail and you should support failure and more. It doesn't work for your everyday practices, but it definitely works for innovation. For example, there was this legendary computer, VIC-20 by Commodore. The way it was created, as it is mentioned by some publications and books, was more like collaborative art rather than standard engineering practices. Or we can look at Xerox PARC, a research center that gave the world a prototype of the modern PC, the Ethernet, the graphical user interface, a commercial version of the mouse, laser printers, and more. Creating all these disruptive innovations was possible due to a completely different approach to innovation processes. One of the things that made Google Gmail possible was the specific policy that allowed Google employees to dedicate 20% of their time to random projects of their interests. At least that's what the letter from Google founders mentions. 20% of work time is a lot if you think about how much work provided by bosses and needed by your business you could do, don't you think? So for many managers, I believe it would be just a waste of time until it's not, until your employees introduce something like Gmail. And there are many more examples on a smaller scale. Starting a project before getting official permission, launching something without completing tasks, ignoring expert feedback, lingering in the office for longer, spending time on activities that are not even related to the project, neglecting some safety policies sometimes, and more. All these rule-breaking steps are often the reason why the world is changing and new things appear, though I, of course, would not recommend to neglect safety policies. Because there are people talented, creative individuals who go against the rules, against the processes, against what their boss says sometimes, who do not worry about KPIs, who follow their gut feelings. And we need to appreciate them and the risks they take, because breaking the rules is always a risk, and we need to appreciate them even if they fail. And I'm not talking about reckless behavior when you just don't care and do something for the sake of breaking rules. But you need to make smart moves that you believe might get you the result you want. And for managers, those are the people you should really appreciate, because they help your company develop and grow. Breaking the rules gives you a new perspective. You do something differently, and only by doing things differently can you find a new way, a new solution that hasn't been discovered. Companies and businesses will always come up with processes and improve them in order to gain control over operations and results. We want to make sure that what we do is effective, efficient, scalable, and that the results we get are positive, meaning we can gain profits. However, I strongly believe that when we talk about innovation, we need to be more forgiving about breaking the rules and processes. We need to allow more freedom, and we always need to focus on people, not the processes. Because once again, there is no rule or process that will create an innovation. A human will. So I wish you good luck with all your innovation projects, all your innovation activities. Oh, and by the way, Happy New Year! I wish you a prosperous 2026 with lots of success and lots of breakthroughs. I wish you a great day and hope to see you next time. Bye!